To get some insight into how much corruption and honesty persist and what their roots are, let's look at a research paper on this topic. Some countries, of course, are more corrupt than others. People in those countries are more used to paying bribes, they're more used to disregarding their governments, they're more used to thinking of the public sector as something to be exploited rather than to be obeyed. But what happens when you take these people and take them out of their home countries and put them into a new environment? How do they then behave? Well, in essence, this experiment has been done for us. If you look at New York City prior to the year 2002, foreign diplomats working in New York City, often for the United Nations, they could park their cars wherever they wanted. And if they received parking tickets, they could simply rip up the ticket. They didn't have to pay it, and they didn't have to worry about legal repercussions. In essence, when it came to parking, they could violate whichever laws they wanted to. The question is, which foreign diplomats took advantage of these opportunities to park illegally as much as they wanted? The numbers indicate there's a very clear connection. That is, foreign diplomats from the countries which are corrupt at home are far more likely to rack up a large number of otherwise illegal parking tickets. So, if we look at this graph, we can see here the positive relationship. On the horizontal axis, we have measures of country corruption, which I discuss in more detail in another video. And on the vertical axis, we have measures of the number of parking tickets. And again, you can see in this picture, there is a clear positive relationship. The line is sloping upwards. This seems to be showing that if you can get away with breaking the law at home in a corrupt country, that when you're in the United States working as a diplomat, you will be more inclined to ignore social norms, in this case, when it comes to parking behavior. If you look at the list of countries which are the worst violators when it comes to diplomatic parking tickets, in order the list reads Kuwait, Egypt, Chad, Sudan, Bulgaria, Mozambique, Albania, Angola, Senegal, and Pakistan. Kuwait is somewhat of an exception, but in general those countries rate as being extremely corrupt. Just to put this in some kind of context, in the case of Kuwait, over a 5-year period, a typical diplomat racked up over 249 parking tickets. On the other hand, there are some countries which, over a period of years, racked up literally 0 violations in terms of diplomatic parking tickets, and that includes the Scandinavian countries, Canada, and Japan, and in relative terms, they all rank as quite non-corrupt. So even when their diplomats have the chance to park illegally in New York City, they simply don't do it. It seems they're very much used to following the rules, whether they are at home or in New York City. We do see a policy shift starting in the year 2002. After that point in time, if a diplomatic car racks up 3 or more parking tickets, the license of that car can be suspended, and what happens is that quite suddenly the number of diplomatic parking tickets drops. It drops by about 98%, and you can see that here on the graph. It's a very dramatic drop, and of course that's a significant change. That's showing that when it comes to corruption, incentives can really matter. When there's some incentive not to be corrupt, well, even corrupt individuals seem to respond. So, to draw out broader lessons. First, as I just mentioned, corruption really does seem to respond to incentives. And when the incentives not to be corrupt are there, and when they are enforced, corruption can drop quite suddenly. But another point, maybe subtler, is the notion that honesty is sticky and the behavioral responses do not run in both directions. That is, if a culture develops norms of following rules and obeying the law, that even when you take individuals out of those cultures and put them in an environment where they're subject to less constraint, that honest behavior may stick. It's remarkable, actually, how much those individuals will still internalize and follow a lot of rules and norms, and those are the individuals from the countries that have a 0 or very low number of diplomatic parking tickets. In other words, incentives can make corrupt individuals behave honestly, but incentives which allow you to be corrupt don't necessarily make honest individuals start behaving corruptly. All of this is available in a paper which was published under the title Corruption Norms and Legal Enforcement, Evidence from Diplomatic Parking Tickets. By the way, some of the online versions of this paper have a different title, starting with Cultures of Corruption. Anyway, you can Google to this online, get a better look at where the numbers come from, and see in more detail exactly what the authors did. This has become a very well-known economics paper on corruption.